I'm just thinking about, what am I thinking about? Well, I was thinking about this knowledge video I made yesterday when I was thinking about situated knowledge. And I got myself completely confused in that, I have to say. Or at least I didn't get to the confusion that I had when I started. I think all I'm saying with this idea of situated knowledge is that, well, two things really. Firstly, on the face of it, situatedness of knowledge, if you take that situatedness far enough, seems inevitable. And secondly, I don't know to what extent the whole idea of a situation and the kind of spatial and locative metaphors that surround that create the problem, or whether they're just indicative of it. What I mean by that is that when I say that all knowledge is situated, I don't mean that in that completely cultural relativist sense that was kind of popular a few years back. I mean, certainly some knowledge is situated, I'm assuming. It is certainly possible for an individual or a group of individuals to be in a particular social situation. Is that right? Yeah, to be in a particular social situation where they have privileged access to certain facts, certain experiences, which no one outside of that group of people could have access to. Or they could have access to the same facts, but the same facts organised in a way which is particular to that group of individuals, which again no one outside of that group no one outside that group could access that organisation. I can't really think of an example right now. I keep thinking whilst I'm talking. I think it's also possible, although I'm not absolutely sure of my facts in this case, I think it's also certainly possible for unique individuals to have access to certain experiences which is outside of the realm of possibilities that other individuals can have. The reason why I say that I'm not sure about that is because that's not so much to do with knowledge, it's to do with the expression of knowledge. Let me just see if I can figure out what I mean by that. I mean, certainly I have, if I spill this coffee on myself, I have access to pain which no one else has. It's a unique experience. The pain that I would have of that coffee spilling all in my lap would be unique to me. Does that mean that pain is therefore unique? Does that pain constitute a kind of knowledge which is unique to my situation, to my being situated at the delivery point for that hot liquid, or is there a kind of way of translating that experience into knowledge which can be communicated? I mean, I could certainly make appeals to things like empathy, or I could make a reference to kind of biological functions that other people may have, or I could make reference to particular kinds of biological changes that are taking place that I could put up against other kinds of biological changes happening in other people's bodies. I can make reference to cognitive effects that pain has, the kind of surging of different chemicals that goes on in my body and which creates these kind of cognitive effects, or vice versa. And again, I can point to the mechanisms for that and refer them to mechanisms in other people's bodies and generalize the information out that way. I'm still not absolutely sure whether that constitutes knowledge or not, or whether I've really communicated the knowledge of that pain or not. I suppose what I'm talking about there is what's sometimes called the Mary problem, which comes from, I can't remember his name now, somebody Jackson, it'll come back to me in a bit, which is this, it's a problem in cognitive neuroscience, a kind of thought experiment in cognitive neuroscience, where you imagine this scientist who's lived all her life in a black and white room with access to all of the world's knowledge, but only access to it through a black and white monitor screen, and you hypothesize that she learns everything there is to know about colours. She learns everything to do about wavelength, about how eyes work, about all this stuff. So she knows hypothetically. She knows everything there is to know about colours. And then one day she steps outside the room and sees a red rose for the first time. And the question you have to ask there is, has her knowledge increased at that point? I mean, it feels kind of intuitively correct that she would, that something else has happened when she's experienced the colour red, which hasn't been captured by all of that other kind of data and knowledge that she's got access to more kind of theoretically. But I know there's all kinds of problems which come out of that. In fact, there's a great book called The Problem Is, I think there's something about Mary, I think it's called, which is a collection of essays based on the back of that, which is critiquing the problems of that thought experiment. But it does get to the heart of this thing to do with, you know, whether my spilling coffee in my lap constitutes situated knowledge, or knowledge which is kind of ultimately situated within the body of an individual. Does qualia, the felt experience, constitute knowledge? I don't know. I mean, I don't think it does, if I'm honest. I think knowledge only constitutes itself when it becomes some other kind of form, I think. I'm not really sure if I mean what I'm just saying now, but it doesn't feel quite right to me. I think knowledge has to mean something else other than primary experience, whatever that means. But I think I'm just arguing against situated knowledge now, aren't I? But if qualia, the spilling of coffee in my lap and the feeling of the coffee and that unique experience which only I can experience, if that is a kind of paradigmatic example of situated knowledge, then what would it be a paradigmatic example of knowledge which is not situated? I don't know what that would be, but I'd like to find out. I guess that would be the aspiration of all scientific and rational inquiry. Is it possible to strive for knowledge which is not situated, knowledge which is not just available to one person, knowledge which is not just available to a group of individuals and which would differ according to which group you spoke to, knowledge which is not just available to individuals, but which is available to, well, not just available to a group of humans alive at one particular time, but perhaps spans across a sea of time, knowledge which is not just viable on this particular planet, but would operate in all kinds of planets with different gravity or beyond planets at all, or a knowledge which is applicable not just in a kind of three-dimensional space or four-dimensional space-time in which we seem to be lodged, but would be applicable across additional dimensions. Is it possible to think about a kind of knowledge which doesn't use dimensionality at all? And I guess here we start to lean on things like mathematics. Is it possible for knowledge to exist out with the systems that we can construct? Yeah, I suppose here I'm getting to where I started off in the first place. Really, to the extent that knowledge is situated, either in the human or in the in that scale that I just talked about, is that a product? Is my thinking about that a product of my using situatedness metaphors, spatial metaphors, to think about how knowledge might be more expansive or more inclusive? Are there better metaphors and models for how knowledge works, which don't rely on this spatialization of it? I don't know, really. Probably not, actually. I think we are kind of locked into certain metaphorical models for understanding. Well, for understanding, and I think a key one of those might well be spatialization. And whilst we're striving for the view from nowhere, or the view from everywhere, or the understanding of higher dimensions, if you might want to call them that, or understanding of deeper science and more fundamental particles, we're constantly doing this kind of thing without knowing. We're expanding out in scale and diminishing in scale and doing all these kind of spatial peregrinations, I suppose. I don't know what I'm talking about, really. Anyway, that's all I can think of today.